Warning: All Things Crime is a true crime production that may contain violent or disturbing material. Viewer or listener discretion is advised. I may have been a low-level officer, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that was probably the worst possible scenario that could have happened. And just the fact that women and children have been American citizens, women and children have been left behind to be, I'm trying to think of what an equivalent would be. Those of you that are dads, imagine allowing your daughters, right, your wife and your daughters, to be in a prison or something, and they're with a bunch of rapists. That's essentially what we've done with we've condemned them to, maybe they'll survive, but if they do, there's a good chance that they're going to be scarred for life if we do get them out of there. And or at least if we don't get them out of there before the Taliban gets their hands on them, because it's just disgusting what is going to happen to those guys. Hello, everybody. It's Jared. I'm back at you today. Excited to be here. It's pretty wild. I've been in kind of a funk for the past 5 or 6 days, and talking to my wife and trying to figure out what was going on. And I realized that, you know what? This is just such a unique time that really been struggling. And I think a big part of it is because of what's been happening in Afghanistan. And we're definitely going to address that. So I wanted to talk a little bit today, and I wanted to go live with this just because I wanted to get it out there sooner rather than later. And this is just something that is just near and dear to my heart. For those of you that don't know, I served 14 years in the U.S. Army, and part of that was with the 101st Airborne Division. So 101st Airborne Division is an elite division. They're rapid deployment. They always have at least one company, if not a battalion, that's on ready. And that one company, by the way, when I was there, pretty amazing. This company of soldiers had all of their equipment palletized, and not just the equipment, but they had what's called an A bag, which is a duffel bag full of their clothes and stuff ready to go. And they were wheels up, meaning that they were in the plane, gone in 30 minutes. And those guys could be on a C-130 flying somewhere, anywhere in the world within 30 minutes. And that's what we in the military call the rapid deployment. So I know the SEALs and everybody else, man, those guys are even faster. Those guys are deployed all the time. So, but as part of my training, I went to what's called Ranger School. And I wanted to read this for you, and this might give you a little idea of why, if you're paying attention at all with what is going on in Afghanistan, and I 100% understand there's not a lot that we personally can do. We can call our congressmen, we can call our senators, we can say, hey, put pressure on the administration. There's Americans left in Afghanistan. And aside from the $2 trillion, yes, that's economically to the United States, $2 trillion wasted in Afghanistan is unbelievable. $85 billion worth of military equipment that we left there is unbelievable. But to me, leaving Americans behind is unpardonable. I can't fathom, and here's why. So in Ranger School, one of the things we had to do was learn the Ranger Creed. And now imagine this is probably like 6 or 7 paragraphs. Imagine trying to do this on 2 hours of sleep every day. And we had to be able to recite this thing at any time. It didn't matter how sleep deprived we were. We had to know this cold, and we had to deprive it. Now it's been 20 years or more, so I'm not as up on it, but I've always remembered this, and this has been part of, just ingrained in my soul. And I wanted to read this to you. So this particular paragraph is what is so near and dear to our hearts. And this is, I'm trying to kind of speak out for a lot of the other military members that I know that are out there. A lot of you law enforcement, that, you know, the guys that I interact with the most, men and women, by the way, I'm not discriminating here, but the men and women of law enforcement, many of them have served in the military. And those of my brothers and sisters in arms in the military, you guys know what I'm talking about here. But it says, energetically, will I meet the enemies of my country? I shall defeat them on the field of battle, for I am better trained, and I will fight with all my might. Surrender is not a ranger word. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy, and under no circumstances will I ever embarrass my country. Now, you just take that little paragraph right there, and that is why there are so many veterans, especially those of you that fought and was deployed over in Afghanistan. I know what you guys are. I didn't deploy there, but as a veteran, I know what you guys are going through, and I am feeling with you, and it is just sickening what has happened over there. I'm not opposed to leaving Afghanistan. After 20 years, if those guys can't defend themselves and fight for their own country, then there's not much that we can do about that. However, the way we left is what is so disgusting to me, and frankly, I think it's going to be devastating. You know, we have open borders. I've talked about that in the past, and it's still a major problem. I've been down to Panama. I've seen the immigration problem that they have. I'm telling you that it is crazy what is happening all over the world with politicians, especially using immigrants as kind of pawns to punish other countries. I know that's happening in Europe, with some countries that have border disputes and things like that. But these are people. These are people that are being used. And if we in the corporate world used people the way that some politicians throughout the world are using people, and I don't want to make this political. It's not political. This is a matter of just being human and right and wrong. And again, as a veteran, just kind of expressing, I just kind of had to throw this out there. You know, I've started evaluating the last 6 days, and ever since the withdrawal really started happening, all of the chaos that was happening at the airport, and something that really triggered me was those 13 Marines and soldiers that were killed at the Kabul Airport. And I actually posted something about that on, as if things weren't bad enough. When that happened, especially knowing the circumstances behind that we were relying on a terrorist organization, the Taliban, to help secure that. Man, I really struggled with that, because there's so many different ways that this could have gone differently. You know, if you think about the security that our armed forces over the past 20 years, their posture that is, they've set up, you know, different concrete barriers and with multiple layers of security that they would put in between them and any possibility of a car bomb or even a suicide bomber. And then the chaos that happened there at the airport is just, it was tragic. So the one post that I have made in the past week was about that. And it's pretty crazy. Now I have about 8,000 connections here on LinkedIn. And so, which is not a lot on a lot of people's scale. But for me, a typical post like that just had some text and then a picture, but the picture was of the 13 coffins that were draped in American flags inside of like a C-130 or a C-17 or something like that. And now, whether or not it was the 13 doesn't matter. The fact that there were veterans that were in the war zone, these Marines and soldiers that were killed there at the Kabul Airport. I made that post in order to honor them, and it was amazing. It got I think 55 reposts, a lot of people, and I don't know, 14 or 1,500 comments, and 45,000 views. I mean, the thing for me, for my small connection base, that's a viral post for me, and that absolutely blew up. And it was amazing to me how many positive posts and comments were made on there. How I think I was able to express the pain and suffering that a lot of people in the United States, especially, but there were comments from people all over the world. And I'd say 98% of them were very positive and supportive and good comments that people were just expressing the sadness and the rest in peace type of a comment about to a lot, about the 13 that were killed. And again, as a veteran, it breaks my heart, especially when, in my opinion, it could have been avoided. I mean, there's so many things that I was only a captain when I retired, and so I wasn't really high level. I had some training in my specialty was nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, but having been attached to a field artillery brigade as well as the 101st Airborne Division, and then multiple agencies past, not agencies, but different type of units past that, military intelligence, that kind of, it was pretty amazing. I had a pretty good variety of training and different units that I was attached to. In the process of doing that, I was able to gain some knowledge on how to assess a situation, especially enemy movements and things like that. And for generals and colonels and everybody that did this planning, for them to screw this up as bad as they did and got soldiers killed and Marines killed, to me is just unforgivable. Yeah, it is unforgivable what has happened and what is currently happening, and then leaving Americans behind. Even President Biden admitted that they have left 10% of Americans behind in Afghanistan, and I just, as an American, you can't do that. And I hope whatever country you are listening to this from, I hope whatever you have enough loyalty and enough love and patriotism for your country that you feel the same way that I do about Americans. You cannot leave countrymen behind in the hands of terrorists, and especially just from a law enforcement and a crime solving perspective. If you have any understanding of what Taliban do to women and especially little girls, but children in general, they are ruthless. Many of them have no education. They're almost equivalent of 7th century cavemen. And they look at women as just something that cooks for them and takes care of children and pleasures them, and that's it. And anyway, I don't want to get too far into that, but from a law enforcement and a crime perspective, women in Afghanistan now cannot be in a worse position. Anybody that claims that they support women's rights and the women's protection and all of that, and then you're okay with what's going on in Afghanistan. You either don't understand what's happening, or you need to reevaluate what's going on, because there's no woman that is safe in Afghanistan now. And I think out of a 40 million population, if you take half of that, there's 20 million women now. And many of them, if they're educated or they're a politician, there were professors and mayors and people like that. The Taliban is just going to kill them. And anyway, so this kind of explains really some of the funk that I'm in. And in talking to my wife, I was thinking about what was it, and this is before I really recognized what it put me into it, and what kind of triggered this, why I wanted to come on and do this live, is I haven't felt this way since 9/11, 2001, so 20 years ago. And I remember that day like it was yesterday, and anybody that actually lived through it, that was an adult that lived through it, you understood the horror of what was going on. Once we saw the towers, and the news cycle was just kind of like what's going on with Afghanistan right now. They looped it over and over, those planes hitting the tower. And yes, we see it every night, every September 11th. But back then, in 2001, when it actually happened, first of all, I was a company commander for an Army Reserve unit. And so that had special significance for me. But in addition to that, just as an American, but I think this kind of shock happened all over the world, where we were staring at these images of these planes. Nobody ever thought of the damage a plane could do to a building. And even when it hit the Pentagon, but the Twin Towers coming down, anybody that actually saw that, how could you possibly forget it? And yet I think as Americans and as people of the world, I think many of us have forgotten it. And there's actually some out there that deny it ever really happened, and conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, the shock that the country experienced from that was just absolutely staggering. And business, it shut down businesses. Yeah, I mean, you think COVID's bad. Imagine all flights being canceled. Everything was grounded. It was an insane time. And, if any of you actually lived through that, definitely make a comment in there and, tell me how you feel, or how you felt back then. Back to that post that I made last Friday in honoring those 13 men and women that died from the military, U.S. military, and honoring them. Any of you that made comments on there, I just wanted to thank you for making a comment, and hopefully you were one of the positive ones. There were a few negative ones that, I don't know, one lady, I think she was from Australia. It was kind of weird, trying to actually politicize it like, that wasn't our country and it was all for profit. And anyway, I was like, whatever. So, but the rest of you that helped me honor those 13, then thank you for your comments and helping that be exposed and get out to so many people. Marla says it was surreal and unbelievable on a 9/11. And that's kind of how I feel now. And I 100% agree with that. It's weird watching what's happened in Afghanistan. Again, not that I disagree with pulling out of there. It was time. But the way we pulled out of there and just the chaos, I may have been a low level officer, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out that was probably the worst possible scenario that could have happened. And just the fact that women and children have been American citizens, women and children have been left behind to be, I'm trying to think of what an equivalent would be. Those of you that are dads, imagine allowing your daughters, right, your wife and your daughters, to be in a prison or something, and they're with a bunch of rapists. That's essentially what we've done with some of we've condemned them to, yeah, maybe they'll survive, but if they do, there's a good chance that they're going to be scarred for life if we do get them out of there, and or at least if we don't get them out of there before the Taliban gets their hands on them, because it's just disgusting what is going to happen to those guys, and it's horrible. So just that's just one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I don't want to break this too long, but the bottom line is, business-wise, we are an influential community, and my call to you is to get a hold of your congressman, your governor, your senators, and plead with them to make the case to be forceful with getting those people out of there, and most importantly, to start securing up the United States, because and whatever country you are listening to this from, you could be in Japan, you could be in Australia, you could be in Europe, Thailand, it doesn't matter. You are in danger now. The Taliban now has possession of 85 billion, and you look at the list, there's over 380,000 automatic weapons. Everything that's military grade that we left back there. Some of it might be, there's 300 and some helicopter, like Black Hawk helicopters. Some of those aren't functional, and I understand that. But clearly they've been able to fly some of them, because I saw yesterday that they hung a guy from the bottom of a Black Hawk helicopter, flying around with a body, suspended. It looked like he was suspended by his neck. So they hung a guy and flew him around with one of our Black Hawk helicopters. So yeah, to say that these people are civilized and we're going to be able to deal with them, I would challenge that. But my challenge to you is, get a hold of the people that can actually make a difference, and demand that they put pressure on this administration to get those people out of there. And, eventually, the Afghan population has to rule themselves. But if they don't, and in securing ourselves, especially our southern border, been down there, and it's they're one of those, even a few of those 380,000 automatic weapons are going to make their way across that southern border, guarantee it. And when it happens, most likely our law enforcement are going to be the first ones that are going to feel the brunt of that. But explosives, and I mean, $85 billion worth of military equipment. And if you look at that list and think of the damage that could be done, I mean, you go back to 9/11, those 19 or so, Islamic terrorists that were able to pull that off. They pulled that off with our aircraft. Now, lots of things have changed since then, but it doesn't take very much to cause a major panic. The key word of terrorism is terror. So what would it take to cause terror in your mind and in your life? And it is the responsibility of our politicians to secure us so that we can go about our business. And if they're not doing that, then things need to change. So that's my plea for today is, number one, honor those that are serving, honor those that have been killed, and honor those that are protecting us, whether that be military or law enforcement, our firemen, all of our first responders. They deserve our respect, they deserve our support, and they deserve the attention that that they need in order to continue to do their job, to protect us so that we can go about and do what we do. And some of you are consultants. Some of you are, do things like what I do with podcasting and M-Vac Systems, which is, the DNA collection, or I don't care what you do. Your business requires security, and that comes from law enforcement and it comes from the military. So I hope you pay them the respect and the honor that they deserve. So, all right, guys,